A while ago, I made a video about this halftime show right here from a 2006 Monday Night Football game between the New England Patriots and the Minnesota Vikings. You can learn more about that show by clicking the card in the upper right corner. I go into the details of that show in that video. However, to make a long story short, that halftime show was a disaster. It was a poorly thought out, poorly planned, and poorly executed catastrophe that led to the fans booing and led to a bunch of people wondering what the heck was going on. Nothing about this halftime show worked. If it was meant to be a cute introduction to ESPN getting the rights to one of the most iconic programs on television, it failed miserably, and this halftime show was never tried again. However, as bad as that halftime show was, and trust me, it was bad, at least it didn't delay the proceedings on the field or mess up the field. Art is extremely subjective. What you might think is trash, another person might think is good. A song or a musical that you find to be ear-grating, someone else might love. Maybe there was someone out there that enjoyed that show. At the very least, the show had no impact on the game whatsoever. It's not as if this halftime show caused damage to the field, or injured the players, or delayed the proceedings. The show was bad, but the second half went on as scheduled with no issue whatsoever. And it was just a really poorly thought out idea for entertainment to occupy the 12 minutes in between the first and the second half. It was laughably bad, and it deserves to be criticized 2 decades later, but it was nothing more than that. Well, I bring that up because I cannot say the same about the halftime show during this game right here. Because roughly half a century ago, during a battle between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers, the 49ers put on a halftime show in front of a national television audience on Monday Night Football that truly was that bad and that catastrophic. What was meant to be a cute way to get people into the holiday spirit turned into a disaster, with fans ducking for cover, players and security guards looking for oxygen, and with the start of the second half being delayed considerably, in a show that was so ill-conceived and poorly thought out that it genuinely needs to be seen to be believed. This was a fireworks spectacular gone horribly wrong, and nearly half a century later, we're breaking it down today, because this is the story behind what might just be, considering the circumstances, the worst and the dumbest halftime show in Monday Night Football history. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's look back at the Monday Night Halftime Show that left the fans waiting for some football a little bit longer than anticipated. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, which, don't worry, there actually is a bunch of footage for, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, as well as how the game itself was going. It's December 12th, 1977. It's week 13 of the NFL season, and as we're wrapping up the year and we're heading into the penultimate week of the campaign, we've got an NFC battle on our hands under the lights at Candlestick Park between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers, two bitter rivals. For the 49ers, this game meant absolutely nothing outside of pride. They enter this game with a 5-7 record, as despite their best efforts to bounce back from an abysmal 0-5 start, it was too little, too late. As with 2 games to go, they were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, with a Jim Plunkett experiment at quarterback really not working out at all. However, for the Cowboys, this game meant a ton. Dallas was absolutely dominant and entered this game at 10-2, having already clinched the NFC East by virtue of winning the head-to-head tiebreaker over Washington. After an 8-0 start, with one of those games being a dominant victory against the New York Giants that you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, Dallas was knocking on the door of the #1 seed in the NFC. The Los Angeles Rams already played, and with 1 week to go, they were at 10-3, so the Cowboys were half a game up. If they could just take care of business and beat a 49ers team with nothing to play for, then by virtue of having the better conference record, the Cowboys would clinch the #1 seed, and the NFC side of the playoff bracket would run through Texas Stadium. Safe to say, there was a lot on the line in this one. And even though this game was not expected to be all that close, with the Cowboys entering this one as huge favorites, this turned out to be, at the time, the highest scoring game in the history of Monday Night Football. It's not that way anymore thanks to the Rams-Chiefs game from 2018, but in 1977, this was the record. Keep in mind that when the season ended, the Cowboys had the #1 defense in the NFL in yards allowed, and the 49ers were at #3. But on a day where two pretty solid defensive teams met, it was the offenses that were unstoppable, as the Cowboys took it by a final score of 42-35. Roger Staubach had one of his finest days as a pro, as the future Hall of Fame quarterback for the Cowboys went 14 for 19, completing 74% of his passes with 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 151.3, which is only a few points shy of a perfect passer rating. Future Hall of Fame running back Tony Dorsett scored twice. On the flip side, Jim Plunkett for the 49ers had 4 touchdowns and no interceptions, having arguably his best ever game as a professional at the time, and definitely his best game as a 49er. Not that there were a lot to choose from. Neither team turned the ball over, and both teams combined for 760 yards of total offense. Keep in mind that this was 1977 that we were talking about. The average game had 571 yards of offense back then, and even today, the average game is 674 yards of offense. So for two teams back in the era of the grid splits, and at a time where the average game had 34 points combined between the two teams, to have double the points and close to 800 yards of offense was astonishing. It was a fun game for the national television audience, one of the best in Monday Night Football history at the time. And I think it was safe to say that this game featured a lot of fireworks on the field. But the fireworks from the teams playing held a candle to the actual fireworks, because there was only one thing that could slow either of these offenses down on this day, and that was the halftime show. Seriously. For the 49ers, this was their final home game of the season, and seeing as we were in December, what do a lot of teams do on their last game before Christmas? Easy. They celebrate the holiday and try to wish fans a Merry Christmas. You'll see cheerleaders performing to Christmas music, Santa Claus making an appearance, some Christmas festivities and decorations and whatnot, and the whole 9 yards. People are already in the Christmas spirit, and with this being the last game before the holiday, it's not a bad idea to do that. As long as you don't pluck out a random person from the stands who is clearly drunk and throw a Santa costume over him, you should be fine. And so, the 49ers decided that they were going to go all out for this halftime show. They were going to launch a ton of fireworks, have Santa Claus riding around on the motorcycle, have a marching band play, have the cheerleaders do something, and have light-up signs that say Merry Christmas. Seems easy and innocent and harmless enough, right? Well, before I show this halftime spectacular, there are 2 problems that we need to talk about. Number 1, this is Candlestick Park. It's a stadium right on the water where everything feels significantly colder and windier as a result, seeing as the closer you are to the water, the higher the winds are. Just ask any 49er fan or fan of the San Francisco Giants what it was like to attend a game at Candlestick Park, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I've spoken with former LB Commissioner Bud Selig about this, and he said that going to Giants games at Candlestick Park was an absolutely miserable experience because of how close it was to the water and how windy it was. Candlestick Park was not good for the elements. And number 2, these fireworks weren't going to be launched from a launching pad at top or outside the stadium. Today, When you see teams launching off fireworks or doing something of that nature for a halftime show, there's not an issue, because the fireworks aren't being launched at field level. The Disney World fireworks shows would be a heck of a lot different if they were being launched directly at the base of Cinderella's castle. I'll put it that way. Launching fireworks where the flight of the firework is not directly in the sight of the fans, and where the smoke from the firework is up above everyone, well, that's a lot different than what the Niners are about to do, because no one with a brain seemed to understand how fireworks actually work and how dangerous they can be. Because with all of that in mind, may I finally introduce you to the most disastrous halftime show in Monday Night Football history. Roll the tape.
The Hula Bowl, the Eastern All-Stars seniors versus the All-Star seniors from the West. All coming your way on ABC. Still the ones. I wish they would have warned us.
This could be the last hurrah.
Mary. Yes. And, of course, we wish all of you the same. A very happy holiday. A good New Year. If you're driving around somewhere, be careful, because a lot of other folks will be driving around out there with you. Great fireworks display. As Howard characterized this game, a festive attitude, even with a 5-7 record for the 49ers. It was not a sellout, but a tremendous crowd has turned out. They're having some fun.
Well, they did sense upset here, and it's still possible. They sensed it because, oh, my...
Hey, Howard.
Look at Santa Claus.
That's Evil Claus.
You know who's just walked in here?
Yes, number 12 in your program. John Brody, who conducted the ceremonies for Jimmy Johnson.
Perhaps the most remarkable quarterback ever to escape near assassination at Keyshaw, John Brody.
And Kurt Dowdy's new sidekick.
I'll do it. She's right next door.
John Brody paying a little visit to the booth.
Nice man. He really is a nice one.
We'll be getting underway in just a moment.
It's going to take a while for this smoke to clear out there.
Well, that could be a good factor for San Francisco in the smoke.
Okay, so I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure out that this is not good. No bueno. You'd think this was the Fog Bowl or something with how much the field is covered up. And it'd be one thing if the smoke quickly passed and it just looked worse than it actually was. But oh no. Oh no, that was not the case whatsoever. Because there were a whole host of problems with this show, aside from the fact they couldn't even make out what was happening on the field because the smoke was covering everything up because of where and how they launched the fireworks. Just for some idea, if I were to show you this picture without any context whatsoever, you would think that it was a war-torn nation, or you would think it was a black and white shot of Disco Demolition Night. You wouldn't think this was the halftime show for a Christmas celebration in a freaking Monday Night Football game. Yet, here we were. The show was so bad that, number one, it delayed the game by 11 minutes, making halftime double its original length. Instead of a 12-minute halftime show, we had a halftime show that was akin to the Super Bowl, except instead of the extended halftime being about Kendrick Lamar taking a victory lap around Drake, or Prince singing in the Purple Rain, the extended halftime was because no one knew the physics of fireworks. Find me too many games in NFL history that had a halftime show that actually delayed the proceedings. It is very hard to do, but this game somehow found a way. But okay, a delayed start to the second half is not ideal, and makes this halftime show a logistical nightmare, especially when the game is already starting at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and is already on super late. But does this make it the worst halftime show ever, even if it completely failed in its objective of entertaining fans in between the halves, seeing as the half couldn't even start on time? Well, when the fans and the players are fearing for their lives, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that yes it does. Because it was reported that fans in the end zone where the fireworks were going off were using their coats to duck and protect themselves from the show. If you didn't have a coat and were one of the people that were braving the weather conditions, or didn't think the weather was that bad, my condolences, because you had absolutely nothing to protect yourself with. Always a good sign when the fans are ducking for cover and are unable to watch the show specifically designed to entertain them, because you put them right in the middle of a war zone. And it wasn't just the fans who were struggling with this halftime show. It was also the players. When you see a player scrambling to go to the bench to get an oxygen tank, it usually means that they either got the wind knocked out of them or they're a big defensive lineman who just went on an insanely wrong return and haven't run that far in one go in ages. You don't expect it to be because the players were watching the halftime show. However, as the players went back onto the field to warm up and saw the aftermath of the halftime show and saw the smoke engulfing the field, the fumes were so heavy that they literally could not breathe and had to resort to oxygen tanks so that they wouldn't pass out. Some players even put towels over their nose to protect themselves. This was one of the only halftime shows in NFL history that put the players at risk because they were in direct line of the smoke. As one writer said on the show, and how disastrous it was, the 49ers, perhaps mindful of ABC's halftime highlights, tried to produce their own with a fireworks show to wish the faithful a Merry Christmas. All the show resulted in was a smoke screen that any general could be proud of, as the field was completely obscured in one end zone for several minutes. And as one writer said on the madness and how out of hand it got, the end zone was virtually on fire. Anytime you hear the phrase on fire at an NFL game, you expect it to be about a player who's playing lights out, and not about a halftime show to celebrate Christmas. It's actually kind of amazing that there were no casualties at this show. We've seen fireworks displays at halftime shows gone wrong before, one of which at the Orange Bowl you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Heck, this even happened at the Super Bowl at Super Bowl 18 a few years later, which you can also learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Maybe there were some minor injuries or people in the stands who had trouble breathing that weren't reported on, but the fact that no one died during this is kind of a miracle, considering how many fireworks went off, considering where the fireworks went off, and considering how absolutely shocking the air quality was. Today, I highly doubt that we'll ever see a halftime show like this again. Or at least, I hope not. I hope to God not. Today, fireworks for a show are launched not on field level en masse, but rather are launched from a specific area, either atop the stadium or on a launch pad across from the stadium, where the path of the smoke is not in the direct line of the people watching. But as a lesson to any entertainment organizers watching this, if your halftime show delays the start of the second half, then you did something wrong. If your halftime show endangers the fans and the players, then you did something wrong. If your halftime show involves so many fireworks that no one can see what's happening, then you did something horribly, horribly wrong. And safe to say, this halftime show went horribly, horribly wrong. There were 77 points combined in this game, and yet the offensive fireworks had nothing on the literal fireworks at halftime. Because on this day in 1977, last Christmas, the 49ers didn't give you their heart. They gave you their entire arsenal of explosives. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.